The twin suns dropped behind the scorched hills like melting embers, staining the horizon in rust-red smears. Wind howled across the metallic bones of the desert bazaar, rattling rusted mech panels, stirring coils of magnetic sand into the air. At the center of the pit, a cage swayed from an obsidian hook buried deep in the rock. Inside that cage sat a girl, no longer trembling, no longer proud, just still. Her skin shimmered with a hue that didn't belong on this world. Cobalt blue with veins that faintly pulsed in bioluminescent rhythm, like a heartbeat that didn't know how to stop. Her white-silver hair hung in weighted strands, wind-tangled and brittle. Wrists wrapped in cloth, ankles chained to a reactor coil pylon behind her, humming softly. They called her defective. No one called her by name. A voice crackled through the amplifier horn above the auction table. Next up, Lot 93, Zaracon hybrid female, age cycle 23, structurally stable, biometrically sterile. Laughter rippled through the rusted bleachers, voices hoarse from smoke and conquest. In short, pretty to look at, no use for spawn. Good for fixing panels, warming a bed, or scaring children. Half the price of a drone start at 50 microcreds. She didn't flinch. The crowd gathered tighter. Mercs in sun-warped armor, scavengers with faces hidden by desert veils, engineers with mech hounds leashed to rusted chains. Their eyes saw a relic, a reminder of a war lost, a genetic experiment never finished, a barren anomaly in a galaxy obsessed with lineage. In the back, a tall shadow stepped forward, not armored, not marked, just a man, dust-covered jacket, worn-out boots, a rebreather hanging around his neck, never used. He carried no weapon, but his silence hit heavier than a cannon pulse. He approached the auction table without ceremony and placed something small on the slab of scorched iron. Not credits, not barcodes, just a ration chip. The auctioneer squinted. That ain't even worth a light battery. You lost, off-worlder? The man's voice was low, not cruel, not desperate, just clear. Didn't come to buy her. He turned his head slightly, eyes catching the girl through the cage bars. I came to see if she'll walk out. The crowd stilled. Even the storm paused. The girl's gaze lifted. Just a fraction. Not hope. Just surprise. The auctioneer scoffed. You serious? This one's been returned 3 times. She won't breed, won't fight, won't talk. Ain't got no home coding, no partner marks, no function. You want her? Pay. Otherwise move along. Sand's blowing soon. The man stepped closer. Dust gusted around his boots. I'm not looking for function. Or bloodline. Just someone who won't leave when it gets hard. That silenced even the snide laughter. The chain connecting the girl to the pylon buzzed with energy. She turned her face away from the crowd, away from the weight of eyes. But she didn't look away from him. Her voice, when it came, was hoarse from silence. You don't even know what I am. He tilted his head. Neither do you. Maybe that's why I'm here. A murmur swept through the pit, but no one interrupted. No one stepped forward. No one matched his offer because there was no offer to match, just a man and a girl and a question neither dared ask out loud. The auctioneer raised his hands in mock surrender. Let her go then. No refunds when she bolts, the pylon hissed. The chain disengaged with a snarl of steam. Her cuffs sparked and clanked open, releasing her wrists. For a second, she didn't move. He waited. Wind curled around them like something alive. Then one knee shifted, then the other. She stepped from the cage, chain sliding behind her like shed skin. Her bones cracked. Her breath hitched. Her first step left a deep print in the sand, and her second one erased it. She stopped in front of him, not near enough to be touched, not far enough to escape. What do you want from me? She asked. He shrugged gently. Nothing. A beat. But you can have the outpost. If you stay. Her jaw clenched. Why would I stay? He looked at her with something that wasn't pity. Because no one else asked you to choose. That broke something inside her thumb. Not a wound, but a silence too long left untouched. Her eyes burned from dryness, from salt withheld. She nodded once. The raiders muttered. The auctioneer moved on, but in the margins of that rust-choked sandpit, something real had happened. A girl stepped out of a cage. A man didn't save her. He offered her. And for the first time, the wind didn't sound like laughter. It sounded like permission. They arrived at the outpost long after the suns had drowned behind the sand ridges, and the cold had begun to chew through her bones. She didn't ask where they were going. He didn't explain. Their words had been used up in the cage. What followed was silence. Not sharp, not cold, just heavy with things not yet ready to be spoken. The hauler was half sunk into its own age. It hissed with old mechanics and smelled of worn iron, thermal gel, and rusted hopes. She sat in the back compartment, curled beside an old plasma torch box, watching the storm behind them grow smaller in the rear viewport. Her wrists bore the faint indentation of the cuffs, and her fingers twitched every few minutes, as if waiting for the chain to return. When the outpost came into view, it didn't come all at once. It rose slowly from the red sand like a buried fossil. Angular structures leaned into the wind like old warriors. Power cables crawled across their roofs like veins. A half-dome shield generator blinked erratically, failing to hold its shape against the atmosphere's whispers. He parked the hauler without ceremony. The engines coughed, then died. And then they simply sat. No welcome party, no drones, no AI voice saying home recognized, just wind. He finally moved, grabbed his jacket, held the door open, not for courtesy, for choice. She stepped out. Sand crunched beneath her bare feet. The cold bit her ankles. And still she followed. Inside, the outpost was alive, but barely. Warm lights flickered down narrow hallways. Console panels blinked, some taped shut. A solar array hummed from a distant room. The smell of fried metal and something faintly sweet, like old coolant and dried tea, clung to the air. He led her to a room at the far end of the corridor. Here, she stepped in. It wasn't large. A cot, a folded thermal blanket. One wall was lined with components and half-repaired gear. Optic rigs, respirator filters, a cracked stasis kettle. Another wall had a single hollow frame, empty. He lingered in the doorway. You can stay here. You don't owe me anything. She looked at the cot, then at him, then back at the cot. No chains, no expectations, no price. Just space. This used to be someone's room, she murmured. He didn't answer, just nodded once and walked away. She stood for a while, then slowly, carefully, sat on the edge of the cot. It groaned under her weight. She didn't remove the cloak. She didn't lie down. She just stared at the wall until her breathing slowed again. Until she remembered what it meant to stop waiting for pain. In the days that followed, they barely spoke, but in the silence, things moved. She cleaned the vents in the corridor when no one asked. She fixed the cracked kettle and boiled water for the first time in weeks. She found a small robotic bird collapsed near the solar rig, wings jammed, lens cracked. And she repaired it with parts she stole from a broken toaster unit. He noticed everything, never said a word. But a plate of food would always appear on the table when she passed through the kitchen dome. And each night when she returned to her room, the heating vent was always humming low. Once she found a folded coat outside her door. Inside the lining, her name. Not her given name. The one she'd whispered once, long ago, when her first pairing partner asked who she really was. The name she had erased from every database. The coat read, Kira. She pressed her palm over the name and exhaled. The old caretaker, A. I still flickered in the control hub. Its voice stuttered, its logic processor misaligned. But it tried. Greetings, resident. Name not found. Human pattern recognized. Jacob Varn. Status, emotionally inconsistent. Would you like to engage in colony pairing mode? Error mode. Override? She leaned against the wall as the AI tried and failed to load compatibility charts. The screen glitched, flashing symbols of hearts, then flickering into engineering schematics. Jacob, the human, just ignored it. She watched him from the shadows of the upper walkway sometimes. He worked like he didn't need rest, like he didn't want it, fixing hull seams, calibrating weather shields, feeding the half-mechanical creatures he kept in the stasis barn, limping robo-dogs, one-eyed cargo bots, a floating orb that repeated poetry fragments for no reason. He gave time to broken things and never asked them to become whole. One night she sat on the sand outside the outpost dome. The stars bled violet through the atmosphere dome, twin constellations of the Zarakan belt glittering faint above the horizon. He joined her, wordless, and handed her a cup of something hot. It steamed. "You don't know what I was before," she said softly. He looked up. "Doesn't matter. You're not in it anymore." I was returned. Twice. Once for not bonding, once for not conceiving. My blood doesn't respond to pairing codes. My cells reject lineage requests. She let the words fall like dust. "What does that mean to you?" she asked. He sipped. "Means you weren't built to be owned. Some folks can't handle that." She stared at him. "You really don't want a child?" He looked at her, slow and certain. "I want someone who doesn't run the second the walls crack." "That's rarer." The cup trembled in her hand, not because of cold, because she'd never heard that answer before. Later that night, she lay in her cot. The lights flickered in the ceiling like quiet stars. At the edge of the bed, a small heating coil pulsed low, humming like a heartbeat. She didn't cry, but her chest ached in a strange new way. Not pain, not grief, just something beating, as if her body had remembered it was allowed to feel. By the seventh day, she was waking before him. She rerouted power from the storage cells to restore the broken irrigation line. She configured the mech drones to sweep the courtyard of sand debris. She found an old audio chip labeled Music Number 3 and played it through the intercoms while she worked. The outpost began to breathe again. Not fast, not loud, but alive. And when she passed him in the corridor, he didn't say thank you. He just touched the wall twice as he walked past. A signal. Not for ownership, but respect. One afternoon, while scrubbing engine grease from her fingers, she found an old data slate in the repair bay. Inside it, fragments of a letter he'd never sent. "To anyone listening, I don't need a crew. I don't need a wife. I don't need heirs or flags. Just someone who knows how to stay when things stop working. Someone who won't replace silence with shame." She stared at it for a long time. Then, without deleting it, she copied it onto her own slate and added one sentence beneath. "I'm still here." She left it on the console for him to find. She didn't wait for a reply, but the next morning, the AI stuttered again in the control hub. "Compatibility index? 91%. Recalculating? Recalculating? Perhaps love is a system error we never patched." And the robotic bird she'd once repaired flew overhead, dipped once, and left a trail of blue light across the sky. The wind shifted before dawn. From her window, Kira could see the twin suns bleeding through the horizon fog, outlining the desert with liquid gold. The outpost dome flickered under the strain of a storm front. The generator coughed in protest. And somewhere beyond the dunes, the comm towers pulsed red. Warning signals carried by the wind. Trouble was coming. Jacob was already awake in the hangar. His shirt was rolled to his elbows, kin lined with years of heat and battle scars that didn't need explanation. He didn't look at her when she entered, just nodded toward the long crate on the table. "Salvage crew found something buried near the canyon wall." "Not tech. Flesh." She froze. "Live?" "Barely. Looks like one of yours, the find." They opened the crate. Inside, a body, frail and burned, skin like melted azure glass, her species, Zarakan. An identification sigil blinked faintly beneath the skin. The same crest burned into Kira's wrist long ago before she'd been deemed useless. The crest of House Vayner, her former genetic line. Her stomach tightened. "She's from the breeding labs." Jacob frowned. "Yours?" "No one's. Not anymore." The girl's eyes fluttered open for a moment, translucent, milky. Her voice cracked. "The war clans saw it coming. They call you traitor for hiding me." Then she went still. The silence after was thick. Jacob's gaze flicked to Kira. "They'll come for her? They'll come for me." The failed one, she waited for him to say leave. He didn't. Instead, he walked to the weapons rack, the one he never touched, and took out a battered plasma rifle. "Then they'll have to go through me." The raiders arrive. They came by evening, Storm riding their backs, banners made from stripped solar panels, faces masked with bone filters. The desert shook with their arrival, sand cycles, hover skiffs, muscle, and hate. Kira stood by the doorway of the outpost, cloak snapping in the wind. The fear she used to hide behind now burned differently, not in retreat, but readiness. She turned to Jacob. If you fight, they'll kill you. If I don't, they'll take you. Why? I'm not worth— Stop saying that, he said, voice low and certain. You don't get to decide your worth anymore. The raiders fanned out around the dome. Their leader, a massive alien hybrid in bronze plating, stepped forward. His voice carried through the comm static. Human, you hide what's ours. Give her back. She's broken stock. Defective property. Jacob raised the rifle. Then you can't afford her. The leader snarled, hands sparking with an ion whip. You'll die for a barren machine? She's not a machine, Jacob said, leveling his weapon. She's a choice. The first plasma bolt hit the dome and flared white. The battle, they fought like the desert itself, brutal, silent, unstoppable. Jacob fired from the watchtower, cutting through the sandstorm glare. Kira rerouted power from the irrigation grid to feed the defense cannons. Every circuit she touched flared against the dark. For every raider that fell, two more appeared. They weren't after Jacob. They wanted the blue-skinned defect, whose DNA they had once discarded. The rumor had spread across the colonies, the barren hybrid who survived termination. To them, she was proof that their bloodlines still carried weakness. When the defense grid collapsed, Jacob grabbed the emergency relay. Kira, get to the generator vault. No, that's an order. I'm not your soldier. Then what are you, Anne? She looked at him, through the smoke, through the noise, through everything unspoken. Someone who's done running. She turned and sprinted across the sand bridge toward the generator core, plasma bolts searing the air around her. Her coat caught fire at the edge. She tore it off and kept going. Inside the vault, she slammed her hands into the console. The system hissed, power grid offline. Containment breach imminent. Unauthorized user detected. Genetic access required. Her fingers trembled. Her blood. It wasn't supposed to work. She pressed her palm to the reader. Nothing. Please, she whispered, just once. The console blinked red, then blue, then suddenly, white. Gene override accepted. The core flared to life, light pouring through the cracks in the walls, racing up cables like veins awakening. Her pulse synced with the hum of the machine. Outside, the raiders froze, the sand beneath them glowing faintly. The dome's broken panels lit like the inside of a sunrise. Then the explosion hit. The aftermath, when the smoke cleared, silence followed. The storm had burned itself out. Jacob staggered through the ash, rifle dragging behind him. The raider leader lay unconscious at the gate. The sky had turned violet, full of dust and new stars, and there she was. Kira knelt beside the core, her skin glowing faintly, the bioluminescence from her veins brighter than ever. She looked up, breathing hard, eyes full of disbelief. It worked, she whispered. You recoded the grid, and he said, No, I was the grid, the A I flickered to life on the console. New protocol established. Core function rewritten, origin source, hybrid code variant, 93, power stabilized, identity recorded, Kira of No House. Jacob sank beside her, bleeding from the shoulder. You saved us. No, she said softly. I just stopped believing what they told me. He laughed under his breath, half broken, half in awe. Guess that makes you dangerous now. Only to those who chain things they don't understand. The quiet night, they stayed outside until the stars reappeared. The generator thrummed gently beneath them. The desert smelled of ozone and clean air. Rare, almost holy. Kira turned her face toward him. Her eyes glowed faintly like the edge of a storm. They'll come again, she said. Let them. You'll get killed for me someday. Maybe, Jacob said, wiping bloody from his cheek. But at least I'll die choosing it. Something in her chest trembled. She reached out, hesitant, then stopped halfway. Her hand hovered near his jaw, shaking. He didn't move closer. He just waited. Finally, her palm touched his face. Rough skin met trembling fingers. For a heartbeat, the universe was silent. "You're warm," she whispered, "and you're real." Neither smiled, but they didn't look away. The stars burned hotter that night, as if the galaxy itself had turned to watch. And in a ruined outpost, two beings built for opposite purposes sat beneath them. Neither whole, neither perfect, but unchained. The days after the attack passed like ghosts. Wind returned, but softer. The stars above the ridge glowed a little clearer each night, and the outpost, scarred, patched, and scorched, breathed again. Jacob spent most mornings repairing the comms tower. Kira worked on the bioshield relays, her fingers now steadier, more certain. She had stopped flinching at sudden sounds. The echo of chains no longer lived in her bones. And when the AI tried, again, to match them through outdated bond rituals, she just smirked and fed it a new override phrase. "Let me decide." She laughed more, but never loud. Jacob watched her in quiet moments, when she thought no one did. The way she tucked tools back with perfect symmetry. The way she bent down to feed the half-repaired winged drone every evening. The way she sat beneath the solar pylon at dusk, whispering to the wind like it could carry words to someone she'd once been. She hadn't spoken of the war clans, or the crest on the dying girl's body, or the fact that her DNA had rewritten a core system no other being could touch. But she had started leaving her door open at night. That was enough. The ship that didn't belong. One morning the outpost trembled. Not from quake, not from storm, from orbit. A ship pierced the atmosphere without beacon, without clearance, sleek, black, and royal in its silence. No logos, no scars, just smooth, elite technology untouched by the world below. Kira saw it before Jacob did, its hull gliding across the clouds like a blade. Her body went still, her breath shortened. "I know that ship," she said. Jacob lowered his tool. "Friend?" She didn't answer. The ship landed half a click from the ridge. Dust spiraled into the air like breath from an old gun. The air grew heavier. They waited. And then, from the stormlight, he stepped out. The one who returned. He wore a coat lined with silver bone thread. His skin shimmered with soft Zarakan glow. His eyes perfect in symmetry. Engineered clarity. His stride was slow, assured. His hands bare. Not threatening. But every movement made Kira shrink by half an inch. Jacob noticed. The stranger reached the gate without challenge. "Kira," he said, voice like warm metal, "I was told you survived." I didn't believe it. She didn't move. Jacob stepped beside her. The stranger's gaze flicked to him, then dismissed him like static. "You weren't meant to be left behind," he continued. "There was no malice. The pairing failed. You were defective. We couldn't waste resources." "So you sold me," Kira said flatly, "twice." The stranger nodded, not apologetic, just rational. "You must know." That was protocol. But things have changed. He stepped closer. Jacob's stance didn't shift, but his jaw tightened. "I've learned I cannot bond with another. My line ends without you. The breach wasn't yours. It was mine." Kira blinked slowly. "And now I'm useful again." "No," he said softly. "Now you're needed. Return with me. We'll correct everything. No more deserts, no more dust. I have status, credits, a rebuilt sanctum." She looked down at her hands, scarred, grease-stained, real. "You're offering me a better cage." "I'm offering you restoration," he said. Silence. Then Jacob's voice low. "She doesn't need restoration. She's already rebuilt the test." The stranger's tone hardened. "This place won't protect you forever. That man won't protect you when the syndicate hears what you did to the core. You altered classified grid tech. That's unauthorized species-level override. You've become valuable, Kira, and that means hunted." Kira felt something old rise in her chest. The instinct to shrink, to submit, to be logical. Silent, Jacob spoke before she could. "Then let them come." But she decides what happens next. The stranger looked at him, finally seeing. "You'd die for her?" "No," Jacob replied. "I live because of her." The choice, the wind stirred, dust lifted and fell. Kira stepped forward. I used to dream of hearing those words from you. Come back. You were right. The stranger's face softened. Then say yes, she smiled. Not cold, not cruel, just final. You came too late. The words didn't sting. They settled like truth. The stranger reached into his coat and pulled something small, a seal, her original crest, the mark of a line long extinguished. I brought this. In case you wanted your name restored, she looked at it, then at Jacob's outpost, where her name lived on a wall beside a power grid, where broken things bloomed, where her name had never been erased because no one needed it to begin with. No, she said quietly, I already claimed my name. I wrote it in heat and ash. The stranger stood still, emotions unreadable. Then he bowed once, placed the crest on the ground, and returned to his ship. When he was gone, Jacob didn't speak. But that night, when she came to the table, he was already there, 2 cups poured, and in the middle between them sat the crest, burning gently in the light. She touched it once. He called me valuable. I never needed value, Jacob said. I needed someone who doesn't leave. Her eyes shimmered. She didn't look away. The lantern, later that night, she returned to her old room, opened the drawer, took out a piece of metal she'd hidden the first week, a broken nameplate from the outpost's ruined entrance. She etched a new name into it with her tool. Kira and Jacob. Not from code, from choice. Then she lit the old storm lantern and placed the nameplate inside. It glowed like something sacred. The wind changed again, not the harsh, biting wind of Dune 9 storms, nor the whispering gusts that carried voices of the past. This wind was different, warmer, heavier, as if the air itself had begun to believe in something again. Inside the outpost, everything pulsed gently with new power. Lights no longer flickered. Panels held steady. The reactor hummed in harmony with the desert's heartbeat. And Kira, she moved like she belonged, not as guest, not as prisoner, not as property, but as breath, as fire, as one of the roots. The children from nearby salvage camps had started visiting the outer wall again, curious about the strange alien who taught them how to build their first light crystals, how to repair old navigation bots with only copper wire and salt dust. They called her the one who made the dome glow. She never corrected them. Jacob built new benches near the generator core, not because anyone asked him to, but because she sat there often. And when she sat, light seemed to stay longer in the sky. They had no ceremony, no pact, no kiss in the glow of reactors. That wasn't their way. But every evening when they poured water into their metal cups and shared the first bite of the rehydrated stew, they sat close enough to feel each other's warmth, and neither of them pulled away. One evening while she was welding a broken aerial, her hands trembled, only slightly. She ignored it at first. Later, when Jacob handed her the stabilizing bracket, she dropped it. The metal clanged. She said it was nothing. But the next morning, she couldn't hold her plasma cutter. Her vision blurred, and when she collapsed against the railing outside the dome, Jacob caught her before her body touched the sand. His voice cracked as he called for the medical kit. Not with fear, with something deeper, as if the thought of her absence threatened to unmake the outpost more than any storm ever had. The AI scanned her, stuttered once, then stabilized. The result blinked in soft amber. Internal life form detected. Gestation phase. 8.2 weeks. Jacob didn't speak. She sat on the cot, her palms flat on her thighs, staring ahead like the dust might explain the impossible. I was told I couldn't, she whispered. I never needed you to, Jacob replied gently, but I'm still here. If you want this. She looked up at him. There were no tears, no dramatics, just the stillness of someone who had learned long ago not to let hope rise too high. But this time she let it breathe. Days passed differently after that. He built a smaller bed in the corner of her room, not in preparation, just in belief. The half-repaired drone owl now sat near the door, guarding her with mechanical loyalty. Children brought drawings, a blue woman with light in her hands, a baby glowing like a star, a tall human beside her covered in ash. No one called it a miracle, because it wasn't. It was something else, something earned. One night, as a storm circled far beyond the ridge, she went to the core room alone. The air was warm, the silence vast but not lonely. She opened the AI's console and slid in a new entry key. Then she typed, Kira, not by function, not by blood, by choice, by presence. New designation, life bearer of the unmarked lineage. When Jacob found her, she was asleep on the bench, hands still on the console. The screen glowed with her words. He didn't wake her. He just took off his coat and placed it over her shoulders. Outside, the wind stirred blossoms from the strange desert trees they had planted weeks ago. Genetic saplings that weren't meant to grow here. But they had, and now they bloomed, pale green, quiet, defiant. At the gate, he carved something into the metal panel that still bore the outpost name. Not a flag, not a rank, just one line. Not from legacy. From light, in the months that followed, no raider returned, no syndicate reclaimed her. No system override was triggered, because she had written herself into the circuitry of the planet, into the rhythm of the power grid, into the heart of a man who never asked her to become anything, only to be. The child came on a night filled with stars, no alarms, no screaming, just steady breath, strong hands, and quiet strength. When the first cry echoed through the dome, it didn't sound like a newborn, it sounded like a decision. Jacob wrapped the child in the only cloth he'd kept from Earth, weathered, faded, warm. He handed her to Kira like she was starlight made solid. She looks like you, he whispered. She belongs, Kira whispered back. They didn't frame the moment, didn't broadcast it to the stars. But in the AI's core, a new line was added. Kira, designed for silence, rewritten for flame, daughter of no house, mother of renewal. In the classroom, the children painted the outpost dome with handprints, tiny glowing marks that pulsed faintly whenever Kira walked by. The AI began to sing lullabies at night. No one told it to, and the reactor lights never flickered again. Because now there was life here. Real life, chosen. And in the stillest moment before morning, Jacob turned to Kira, the child resting in her arms, and said, They said you were broken. She smiled, tired but glowing. I was. Then she kissed the baby's brow, pressed her cheek to Jacob's shoulder, and whispered, But broken things make the brightest light when you let them burn. And so, beneath a desert sky full of new stars, in a place forgotten by maps and remembered only by love, the house with no name became a legend. Not of blood, of belonging, not of heritage, of choice, not of heirs, of light.